Knoxville, Tennessee has seen its fair share of murders. Few have managed to capture headlines. The murder of 18-year-old Sean Powell had all the characteristics needed to gain attention nationally. The victim was young, and he was involved in a sexual relationship with a student teacher. The Knoxville Love Triangle Case, that's what locals started calling it, would divide locals and ultimately turn Erin McLean into a seductress who drove one man to kill and the other to his grave. Talk of the case around Knoxville has been muted during recent years, but it has not been forgotten. Bring it up to any Knoxvillian, you can guarantee you'll receive a spirited response. If you haven't heard the story, then you'll want to sit back and listen as we unfold the events that led up to the murder of 18-year-old Sean Powell. Chapter 1: The Murder. March 10, 2007. Sean Powell arrives at the McLean home at 2424 Coker Avenue. Eric doesn't want Sean there. He tells him. According to Eric, Sean enters the home anyway. Eric tries to get rid of him by calling 911. A few minutes later, Eric tells the dispatcher it's all right. Sean has agreed to leave. Just 7 minutes later, at 9:22 p.m., 911 operators receive a call from Erin McLean. She is in a panic. She frantically tells the operator that her husband has just shot a man. Police arrive at the scene of the crime. Once there, they find Sean Powell with a gunshot wound to the head. His body rests lifelessly in his Mercedes. Sean's right arm rests between his body and the center console. His right hand clutches a cigarette. The following day, 31-year-old Jason Eric McLean is charged with first-degree murder. Eric has fled the scene after the shooting, but he was located around 9 a.m. on Sunday. Police found him walking along railroad tracks near Westland Drive after receiving calls of a man walking around with a gun. Initially, the case seemed cut and dry. 18-year-old Sean was dead. Eric was locked away behind bars. He never denied killing Sean. Things were just getting started. The tale that the defense would weave would leave locals angry. Not angry at the killer, but angry at his wife, Erin. Chapter 2: The Loving Couple. Erin and Eric had different upbringings. Erin sadly had a troubled childhood. Her parents divorced when she was young, and she ended up living with different family members and friends. Eventually, she would make her way to Knoxville, Tennessee. There she would meet Eric. Eric was born and raised in Knoxville and Lenoir City. He came from a close-knit family with 4 brothers and 2 sisters. His parents had been together for more than 40 years. The two ran into each other for the first time in March of 1994. To Erin, Eric was the best thing ever. He was brilliant and gorgeous. He was cool too. He played in an up-and-coming local indie rock band. At 17, Erin got pregnant. Erin would later admit that the decision was deliberate. They wanted kids, and she wanted to create the family and love that I felt I had never had. After a brief breakup during the pregnancy, the couple got back together and married. They would go on to have another child. Erin graduated from the University of Tennessee. She won a scholarship for an English program at Indiana University. The family packed up their belongings and moved to Bloomington, Indiana. Erin could go to school. The move prevented Eric from getting his degree. No worries though, they had it all figured out. When they returned to Knoxville, Erin would work and Eric would finally get his degree. After returning to Knoxville, the family moved to the house on Coker Avenue. However, their plans would quickly change. Erin just didn't like her job, so she decided to go back to school. Eric didn't like the idea, but he didn't put up a protest. The picture-perfect family was anything but. It would just be a matter of time before light would be shed on the family's dirty little secrets. Chapter 3: The Downward Fall. It looked like the picture-perfect family from the outside. On the inside, it was clear that not everything was perfect. The couple was struggling financially, and according to Erin, they had sacrificed everything for Eric's music, her study of English, and their children. As for their relationship, well, it was put on the back burner. With jobs to juggle and kids to care for, how could they find time for one another? The marriage was quickly falling apart. Eric and Erin's recollections differ as to who was the primary caregiver for their children. According to Erin, Eric was just too busy. He was spending too much time on his music and the UT music programs to care for him. She claimed that he was never home. To Eric, he did most of it. He explained that from 2005 to 2006, his life was hectic. He woke up around 6 a.m., got the kids dressed, got them fed, and walked them to school. After that, Eric went to class and Erin went to work. Eric was there when his kids got out of school. He took them home and he fed them. When Erin returned from work, the family spent about an hour together. That's all they had. Then Eric went to work. He would normally return home around midnight, complete his homework, and go to bed. At this point, it was a loveless marriage. Eric and Erin barely saw one another. It was a recipe for disaster, and it would leave an 18-year-old dead. In the fall of 2006, Erin would begin working as a student teacher at West High School in Knoxville. It is here that she would meet Sean Powell. The events that follow are still hard to believe. Chapter 4: Enter Sean Powell. In a sick, twisted way, Sean Powell was just a pawn in the game. Erin's tumultuous childhood was nothing when compared to Sean Powell's. From the very beginning, he was a victim of circumstance. He didn't know his birth father, and had probably been better off if he didn't know his mother. She was involved in drugs and prostitution. Sean, unfortunately, was in and out of foster homes. Jurors would later discover that the foster system had been very cruel to Sean Powell. When spending time in one foster home, he was kept in a closet. He would shield his plate when he was eating. When someone upset him, he would roll up in a fetal position. Eventually, the birth mother's parental rights were terminated, and Sean was adopted by the Powell family. Things would improve for a short period of time, and sadly, they would worsen. Sean's erratic behavior eventually resulted in his family sending him to a therapeutic boarding school. After 18 months, he would be deemed well enough to return home. Just a year later, Sean would encounter Erin McLean for the first time. From there, he would be ensnared in a deadly game with just one way out. Erin was attracted to Sean because of his struggles. She related to them and sympathized with him. If only things had been different, Sean may still be alive. Chapter 5. The Web or the Love Affair. Erin's story. With Erin's marriage falling apart, she took drastic action. She suspected her husband was going through a mental breakdown, so she put together a plan to solve all their problems and keep her marriage intact. To her, it seemed like an open marriage was the key to the puzzle. Many will argue that Erin was putting together a plan to prevent her husband from leaving her. Whether malicious or just haphazard, Erin's actions would bring death and heartache. She figured she would just stay with Eric for the children and have partners on the side. At West High School, Erin was required to read the records of 35 12th grade students. She was stunned when she stumbled across Sean's. A history of physical abuse and neglect by his mother, a prostitute addicted to crack cocaine. Did Erin see an opportunity, or was she just eager to help the poor boy? Erin said later that she was amazed that despite the abuse and molestation, Sean had survived. She claimed that Sean was a talented writer. Despite earning a generous D for his work, you can eat a hero. Erin placed more emphasis on Sean than any of the other students. That led to more than just a teacher-student relationship. Erin was absolutely devastated when Sean was suspended from school after being caught with alcohol in the parking lot. Erin reached out to Sean's adoptive mother. That mother feared that Erin would risk her job by getting in touch with Sean. Nevertheless, Erin did it anyway. Sean and Erin wouldn't see one another until January of 2007. Sean had been forced into a substance abuse rehab in December 2006. Erin kept in touch with him all the while. The relationship had turned from friendly chatter to dirty talk. When Sean was released from the center, Erin was the one he called. According to Erin, Sean lavished her with praise. He listened to her problems. He even made suggestive overtures to her. She accepted them and happily returned them. She claimed that her husband knew all about it. Was the plan working, or had Erin taken her own idea just a little too far? Chapter 6. Subject: Open marriage. According to Erin. On December 28, 2006, Erin McLean was a desperate man At least this is what Erin says. She claims that her husband sent an email to an open marriage expert on the internet. The letter read in part, "I have been married for 10 years. My wife has lost interest in me sexually and wants to have an open marriage. I want her to be happy, but I'm probably going to have major jealousy issues. I'm not interested in any other woman, but I believe she is interested in a young man in his late teens. I keep getting mental pictures of other men with my wife, so much so I get sick to my stomach and irritated. I can't satisfy her needs, but I don't know if this will work. She's very attractive, so she won't have trouble getting suitors. Do I sound like a bad candidate for an open marriage?" To the expert, Eric was a terrible candidate for an open marriage. Nevertheless, Eric went through with it. Was he eager to keep his wife around, or was he planning something much more sinister? Chapter 7. A Twisted Relationship. Erin's Tale. When Sean was released from the drug rehab, Erin was there to pick him up. She had the whole family with her. They took Sean to a West Knoxville Quaker meeting. Then they stopped and got some food at an Indian restaurant. At the end of the night, Sean was dropped off at the practice space. He would live there another week. Then he would confess to the McLean family that his adopted mother would not let him return. The McLeans found a solution to the problem. They spoke with Eric's father, who was a realtor. Sean was allowed to live in an unsold house. Erin and Sean's relationship became sexual very quickly. Between January the 5th and March the 10th, Erin says they had sex at least 5 times. Eric probably suspected much worse. According to Erin, though, Eric was fully aware of it. In fact, she says that Eric spent more time with Powell than she did. She would later claim that their relationship was twisted. Sean didn't try to hide the affair. In fact, he used it to taunt Eric. Still, Eric McLean spent time with Powell. They would play Star Wars and Pinecone Wars, which the two men made up with the McLean children. After a night out drinking, Eric attempted to convince Erin and Sean to have a threesome. Powell refused. He took Erin to bed, and Eric was left out in the cold. Erin claimed that Eric was always there when she had sex with Sean. She also claims she told her 18-year-old boyfriend to stop taunting her husband, but he wouldn't. She thought Sean had a death wish and that Eric had premeditated his murder. On the next episode. Chapter 8. The Last Straw. Eric's Story. Sean and Erin are rubbing it in his face every single day. Chapter 11. The Defense.